Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then start our class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto ma sadgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, mrityorma amritam gamya. Om Sehna Bhavatu, Sehna Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karvavahe, Tejasvi Navadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's open our Uddhava Gita books. We are on chapter 17. And let's start with the verse number 11. Nateho jagriha kinchit kinchit dasya uddhava devataha kalata kinchit brahmam bandhoram nriparthivat. So Lord Krishna is saying, O Uddhava, some of the wealth of that fallen Brahman was taken away by his relatives. Some by thieves, some by providence, some by the influence of time, some by ordinary men, and some by the king. So the Brahman lost his wealth as a result of natural calamities, such as fire in the house, as well as due to the food grains rotting under the influence of time, theft, government taxes, and pilfering by his friends and relatives. In this way, he became a poor man. If a Brahman neglects his Brahminical duties, he is referred to as a Brahma Bandhu, or so-called Brahman, and not considered a genuine Brahman. One who takes pride in posing as a Brahman without making any attempt to elevate himself to the transcendental platform is not a genuine Brahman, but is referred to as a Brahma Bandhu, or the friend of a Brahman. Devotees of the Lord are not proud, thinking themselves to be the most exalted members of society. Rather, they very humbly think themselves fallen and without any qualifications. However, those who are intelligent know that such humble devotees are actual Brahmans, whose hearts are cleansed by their engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. So typically the Brahman is whose heart is pure, whose mind is pure. So it's like a sattvic, and who is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord, Brahman. Let's look at verse number 12. Sa evam drivne nashte dharma kam vivarjitah upekshitah shvaswaha janas chintam ap duryatyam. At last, when all his wealth was lost, the Brahman, who never engaged in religious practices or sense enjoyment, was totally ignored by his family. Because of this, he began to feel terrible anxiety. So he lost the association or the help of the family also. So verse number 13. Tasyevam dhyayato dhirgam nashta rayas tapasvina khidyatoho vashpa kandasya nirvedasu mahanabhutah. Being deprived of his wealth, the Brahman felt great fear and lamentation. Thereafter, while meditating upon his misfortune at great length, a strong feeling of detachment developed within him. The miserly Brahman had to suffer the consequences of his own faults. Okay, so there's a consequences of our actions for all of us. Finally, due to his previous training in IT, he experienced a change of heart. When he lost all his wealth, the Brahman had no alternative but to live like an ascetic. Verse number 14. Sa cha hedam aho kashtam vrithatma me anutapitah na dharmaya na kamaya yasya arthayas idrisha. The Brahman spoke as follows. Oh, what great misfortune! I simply tormented myself uselessly, working so hard to earn money that was not utilized for religiosity or material enjoyment. When one suffers a great setback on the path of his material life, one may understand that by failing to utilize everything in the service of the Supreme Lord and instead engaging in activities having no relationship with Krishna consciousness, one gains nothing. So, this goal of life, human life, is to develop more and more love for God. But if we just go against it, this is what happens. And he realized that at this point when he lost everything. Sometimes, as they say, you got to hit bottom to really wake up. Number 15. Prayanatha kardya nama na sukhay kadachan ih cha atmohopatapai mritasya narkaya. Generally, the wealth of misers never affords them any happiness. In this life, it simply torments them with anxiety. And when they die, it buys their ticket to hell. So, being afraid to spend any money, misers avoid performing constitutional and conventional duties. Conditioned souls who have forgotten their constitutional position accept many things in this world to be their ultimate goal of life. However, these things become the cause of their degradation, making them suffer in hell in their next life. Because if we make only earning money, holding money as our goal, we'll end up doing a lot of wrong things. And this is what he did. See, we don't have time to make all the mistakes. We got to learn from other people's mistakes too. That's why we study the scriptures. To learn what to do and what not to do. Verse number 16. Yasho yashasvinam shuddham shralyadya ye guninam gana lobha swalpoho pitanhanti shrivnoho rupam ivepisitam. Just as even a trace of white leprosy spoils one's physical beauty, even a tinge of greed destroys a person's good reputation. And sullies whatever praiseworthy qualities are found in a virtuous soul. White leprosy certainly spoils a person's beauty. Okay, so any kind of a person could be 99% good, but one flaw, what will people see? The flaw. Just like if we are wearing white clothes, if there is a one little dot on it, everybody's attention will be on that dot of dirt. So over here, he's talking about the skin, which could be perfect, beautiful skin, but a mark of leprosy. Number 17. Arthasya sadhane siddhi utkersh rakshane nasho upbhog ayasas triasas chinta brahmano nrinam. People who work very hard to earn and accumulate wealth are afraid of spending it are in anxiety about protecting it and become bewildered when it is lost. There are various kinds of distress experienced by one who endeavors to accumulate wealth. Such misery is experienced at all stages, while earning it, while protecting it, while spending it, and when it is somehow lost. There are 15 types of anarthas born of wealth, such as gambling, drinking, wine, and so on. Because the means for acquiring wealth, as well as its attainment, enhancement, protection, and expenditure, are under the influence of time, they are always accompanied by anxiety, hard labor, and bewilderment. Okay? So that doesn't mean that we should not work hard to earn our money, but it should be done properly. See, that's why our rishis, they gave us those 4 goals of life. They did not say that don't earn money, but they say first cultivate the virtues. So the very first goal is what? Dharma. Then artha. Arth means money in this case. Then comes the kama. Fulfill your desires. Then comes the moksha. Okay? So if you don't have the virtuous qualities in our personality, then working hard definitely will give us all these miseries. Then we think that it's ours and we'll hold it and greed will grow and all kinds of bad qualities will come in the personality. Verse number 18 and 19, they are together. Sateyam hinsam nritam dambha kama krodha samyomada vedo varam avishwasaha samspardha vyasin necha एते पंचदशानर्थः हि अर्थमूलः मता नृणाम तस्मात् अनर्थम अर्थाख्यम श्रेयो अर्थिः दुरत्स त्यजेत. 15 undesirable qualities arise because of wealth. So you remember he just said 15, now he's giving us a list of them. Theft, violence, falsehood, duplicity, lust, anger, quarrel, madness, competition, enmity, faithlessness, arrogance, and the dangers arising from attachment to women, gambling, and intoxication. Therefore, those who desire their own benefit should give up attachment to excessive wealth, which is the mother of all anarthas. Okay, so the earth becomes anartha if we go on this route. It takes great endeavor to accumulate wealth. Then one is always afraid that his wealth will be stolen or taken away by some other means. To protect his wealth, one must lie. And excessive wealth certainly is the cause of great pride and delusion. In this way, there are 15 kinds of anartha that surface because of wealth. It can be concluded that artha, wealth, is the cause of all anarthas, unwanted things. One who desires his actually benefit should reject as useless that which is ascertained as beneficial according to worldly calculation. In this connection, there are 15 unwanted things that are created by excessive wealth. The main intention of those who accumulate great wealth is a sense gratification. The unwanted things that are born from excessive wealth are theft, violence, lying, pride, lust, anger, false pride, madness, duplicity, enmity, faithlessness, arrogance, and addiction to women, gambling, and intoxication. In general, gold and silver, coins that are exchanged for the objects of sense gratification are known as artha or wealth. Verse number 20. भिद्यन्ते भ्रातृहोदारा पितरा सुहृदस्तथा एकासिनिग्धः काकिनिघ्ना सद्या सर्वे अर्माकृता. Even a man's brother's wife, parents, and friends who appear bound to him in love can immediately break off their affectionate relationships and become enemies due to a dispute over even an insignificant sum of money. So these days we see that a lot, but looks like this is a problem throughout the history, because this scripture was written more than 5,000 years ago. Okay. Even though one's brothers, father, wife, and friends may appear to be on good terms with him, they can quickly turn into enemies for the sake of a single family. The word kakini means 20 baratika, which is the coin of the smallest denomination or value. So that must be the coins at that time when the scripture was written. So kanika. Verse number 21. See, with the time, the currency changed. I mean, some of us remember the currency when we were little, right? So that has changed. It's no more anymore. But this is like thousands of years ago, the currency was little different. So 21. Arthe nalpiya sahahi ete sankhda dept manyava त्यज्यत्यन्ते आशु सुवृद्धो गरन्ति सहसो सृज्ये so hridama. This is verse number 21. For the sake of even an insignificant amount of money, these dear ones may become agitated and angry. Within a moment, they may give up their affection and sever all ties, even up to the point of murder. The word supardha means audacity or arrogance. Verse number 22. Labdhava janamam mar prarthyam manushyam tad dvij gretam tad anadritye ye swartham granti yante ashubham gatim. Those who obtain this rare human form of life, which is desired even by the demigods, devatas, and take birth as Brahmins, are extremely fortunate. So Brahman over here means the sattvic qualities. If they misuse this opportunity and fail to attain their real self-interest, they come to a most unfortunate end. Human life is superior to that of a demigod, ghost, animal, tree, or an inanimate stone, because the demigods are absorbed in celestial pleasure while neglecting their real self-interest. And in other forms of life, there is predominantly suffering. And self-interest means, see, our goal should be to know ourselves. So if we just do something else, then we are really hurting ourselves. Human life affords one the opportunity of attaining the ultimate goal of life. In the human form, one has the opportunity of surpassing the concocted ideas born of a background of anya vilasa, karma, and jnana, and engaging in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. In the life of a Shudra, which is generally devoid of piety, there is no possibility of contemplating one's real self-interest, because a Shudra is very busy serving the other three varans, as well as his desires for sense enjoyment. Knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma and the right for serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the domain of the best of the twice born, that is a Dvija. However, such a high birth has no value if one is bereft of Lord Hari's service. There is no value in simply becoming a so-called Brahman. In this regard, one should carefully consider this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. The desire to become master of all, one's service checks one's advancement in spiritual life. When a Brahman gives up the devotional service of the Lord and works hard like a Shudra simply for the prestige of his community, then lording it over material nature and the desire to enjoy the fruits of karma become very prominent. A Brahman free from false prestige should feel himself lower than a blade of grass and offer respect to all living entities. All human beings, and especially Brahmins, should avoid becoming killers of their own self-interest by neglecting Krishna consciousness, the loving service of the Lord. Such neglect paves the way for future suffering. Let's look at verse number 23. स्वर्ग अपवर्ग योर द्वारम प्राप्य लोकम इमं पुनान द्रविणो को नुषजेत मृत्यो अनर्थस्य धामने. After receiving this human form of life, which is the gateway to heaven and liberation, who would become attached to the accumulation of wealth, which brings with it all kinds of anarthas? Objects intended for one's personal enjoyment are referred to as dravin, or material wealth. Those who desire to achieve wealth, who endeavor to transfer themselves to the heavenly planets, who practice renunciation with the desire to attain liberation, and who endeavor to attain the four objectives of human life, are unable to achieve their real self-interest because all of these desires are impediments to the attainment of the Lord's devotional service. So that means they all become obstacles on this path. Both material enjoyment and liberation are just like a mirage for those who have received the mercy of the Lord, because material enjoyment and liberation are not conceived of as being in relation to Krishna. They are considered to be anarthas. And in our own ignorance, sometimes we just pray to God to give us more artha, more money. And those are called arthas. You remember Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita talked about four kind of devotees. And one of them was artha. Asking, going to God, asking for the artha, the material opulence. Okay? And what kind of a bhagat he said is very dear to me, is a gyan. Number 24. Dev Rishi Pitri Bhutani Jatin Bandhushya Bhaginah Asamvibhajye Chatmanam Yaksh Vitah Patyate Adha. One who does not give his hard-earned wealth to those to whom he is obligated, such as the demigods, forefathers, great sages, family members, and living beings in general, is no better than a yaksha, and will certainly fall down from his position. Because the demigods, sages, forefathers, living entities in general, relatives and friends are all interrelated. They are shareholders of one's wealth. When one deprives them of their shares and tries to enjoy alone, they will naturally become envious and thus withhold their mercy. This will create an impediment on the path of one's plans to enjoy sense gratification. So if you want to hold hold everything for ourselves. We think we are the owner of everything. Don't share. This is what happens then. Okay? Things should be shared. That's what we learn from this nature. In nature, everything shares. But as human beings, we become very greedy. We think that we have worked hard, it's only ours. Verse number 25. व्यर्थ्यः अर्थे हयावितं प्रमतस्य हे व्योबलं कुशलायेन सिद्ध्यन्ति जरठा किमनु साध्ये. Those who are actually intelligent are able to utilize their money, youth, and strength to achieve perfection. Because these are the powers which we have: money, youth, and strength. Unfortunately, I have feverishly squandered those assets in the useless endeavor for accumulating wealth. This is that Brahman saying, and Lord Krishna is narrating. Now that I have become an old man, it is too late for me to do anything auspicious. So money is gone, the youth is gone, strength is gone. He says, I'm an old man. What should I do? The very wealth for which I had become intoxicated is now gone. Intelligent people utilize their wealth in the service of the Supreme Lord and thus attain perfection. I am now an old man, and so how will I be able to recover my losses? This is the Brahman's lamentation. So from the scriptures we learn that we should not do this, should not go on this path, that we have to lament. The Brahman thought, how will I accumulate the wealth that is required for acquiring the objects for sense gratification in my old age? Verse number 26. Kasmat sa kulishyate he vidvan vyarth arthe he asakrit kasyachin maya nunam loko yamasu vimohita. Why should an intelligent person suffer because of his useless efforts to accumulate wealth? Indeed, everyone appears to be bewildered by someone's illusory potency. So the Brahman thought that his misfortune must have been caused by the influence of the Lord's illusory energy, Maya. By her influence, the whole world is bewildered. Due to lack of knowledge of the absolute truth, the conditioned souls are overwhelmed by the Lord's illusory energy, accepting the manifestations of the Lord's energies as meant for their own enjoyment. It is for this reason that the conditioned souls remain in illusion and thus continue to suffer. So this is the effect of this Maya in our life. Verse number 27. Kim dhaner dhan der va kim karme va kam der ut mritnaha drasya manasya karam bhirvot janam de. For one who is about to die, what is the use of wealth, sense gratification, or any such thing? And what is the use of other persons who may offer them, which simply cause one to repeatedly take birth in this world? So it's like an attachment to the wealth, attachment to the people. We come back here again and again and again. Wealth, the giver of wealth, sense gratification, and the objects of the senses continuously transform by the influence of time. What then is use of being proud, thinking oneself to be the doer that awards himself the fruits of his actions? Next verse 28. Nunam me bhagwansh tushtaha sarvadev me o hari yen nito dasham etam nirvedash shvach atmanaha palvaha. Shri Hari, who's the Lord of the demigods, must have been pleased with me. So again the Brahman is saying, It is by his mercy that I have attained this present state of suffering and have thus developed a sense of detachment, which is the boat that will carry me across the ocean of material existence. So boat is what? This detachment. He says, now I have reached to that condition where I'm detached. I see that. What the goal of life is, and what useless all this has been. When the Brahman realized that his suffering condition enabled him to become detached, he became joyful, understanding that his so called misfortune was actually the Lord's special mercy. Okay? So don't we say that bliss in disguise? This is what he's talking about. From the outside, it looks like a pretty bad situation, miserable situation, but he says, at least I can see it clearly now. Such detachment from materialistic life is a sure symptom of the Lord's causeless mercy. And the Brahman considered it to be the boat for crossing over the ocean of material existence. This detachment. The Brahman thought the demigods are empowered to award their worshippers varieties of worldly and heavenly sense pleasures. Therefore, they are only givers of imperfect benedictions. Now that all my assets have been snatched away, I think that the Almighty Lord, who is my real benefactor, has mercifully given me relief from the struggle for existence that characterizes life in the material world. Now I have become detached from the four objectives of life, such as religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are sought after by less intelligent people. 29. So aham kalavasheshena shoshyase angah atmana apramato khilahaswarte yadi syad siddh atmani. If I have some more time to live, then I will perform austerities while subsisting upon the bare minimum of food. Without further bewilderment, I will execute that which is actually in my self interest and thus remain self satisfied. The Brahman was eager to finish his life of material enjoyment at any cost. He thought that if he could spend the rest of his life thinking of the Lord's lotus feet, which are the root cause of all self interest, then his perfection would be guaranteed. The Avanti Brahmana considered that it is useless to aspire for advancement of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, and also the future to try and rid one of all desires for material enjoyment by performing austerities. He thought to become freed from the materialistic mentality of achieving the perfection of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, I must make shelter of devotional service to the Lord. Okay? So he says the only goal in my life should be love God. That's it. I don't even want any moksha. I just want only be in the situation where I can love my Lord completely. Verse number 30. Tatra mam anumoderin devas tribhuvaneshwaraha muhurtena brahmlokam khatangah sam sadhyat. May the demigods who are presiding deities of the three worlds bestow their mercy upon me. After all, Maharaj Khatwang was able to attain Vaikuntha in just a moment. The Avanti Brahman considered that if the demigods, headed by Indra, approved of his intention, then they will no longer create obstacles for him. Being near the end of his life, he carefully considered what he could do for his ultimate welfare, and while doing so, he thought of King Tawang. who went back to Godhead simply after a moment's engagement in Krishna consciousness. King Khatwang, who had fought on behalf of the demigods, attained the ultimate goal of life within a moment by renouncing all desires for religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. The mendicant Brahman from Avanti prayed to the demigods who manage the universal affairs for the benediction of engagement in the devotional service of the Lord Krishna. इति अभिप्रेते मनसः ये अवन्त्यो द्विज सत्मः उन्मुचे हृदय ग्रंथीन शांतो भिक्षुर अभून muni. Lord Krishna continued, having made up his mind in this way, the exalted Avanti Brahman cut asunder the knots of material attachment within his heart. In this way, he became a self-satisfied mendicant in the renounced order of his life. So the phrase Hridaya Granthi means the knots of the heart. The Brahman was able to untie these knots in the heart, which are in the form of the misconception, that is called avidya. I am the body and everything in relationship to this body in mind, avidya. And the second knot is what? Kama, desires. The third knot is what? Karma, the actions. Okay, that's called a Hridaya Granthi. The most unfortunate Brahman from Avanti became a Tridandi sannyasi, devotee of the Supreme Lord, by cutting the knots of desire for material enjoyment and liberation that had existed within his heart. At that time, the following verses began to appear in his heart. And what is the verse? The meaning: having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all kinds of material activities, knowing that all varieties of sense gratification lead to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain satisfied and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that this will lead to a miserable result, and so he sincerely repents such activities. When an intelligent devotee constantly engages in my loving devotional service as prescribed by me, his heart becomes firmly situated in me. Thus, all material desires within the heart are soon destroyed. When a living entity directly sees me, who is the indwelling supersoul of all living entities, then all his false ego, doubts, and reactions of karma are at once destroyed. And this is from Bhagavad Gita, verse number 32. Sa chachar mahim etam sanyat atma indriya yanila vikshartham nagar graman asango lakshito vishatam. He wandered throughout the world, carefully controlling his senses, mind, and intelligence. To beg alms, he traveled alone through numerous towns and villages, hiding his true spiritual position so that he was not recognized by others. So this is what he did. The Brahman from Avanti became free from all bad association by remaining aloof from those who desire material enjoyment and liberation. He had no desire to acquire name and fame to impress others, as he began to maintain himself by begging alms from door to door. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that according to their karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the universe, Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems. Some are going down to the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering and living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with the bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Christian and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service, just like the Guru and the Ishwar. The acceptance of a three-dand sannyasi is an indication of one's complete dedication to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. The three rods of the sannyasi's dand indicate that his body, mind, and speech are fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. The engagement of one's body, mind, and speech in the service of the Lord enables one to manifest all good qualities, such as forgiveness, detachment, and freedom from pride and material desires. Anyone who fully engages in the service of the Lord, following in the footsteps of the previous learned devotees, will surely attain shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. So let's stop it here today. Had a lot of great messages from these verses today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.